Demon here. Alright, so here we are again. The social justice media is on the attack against us defenseless old nerds and geeks and gamers. This involves the Spielberg movie that just came out, Ready Player One. Now, I'm done with Spielberg. I love the Indiana Jones movies. I love Schindler's List. I like Empire of the Sun. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I could go through his incredible, deep, wealth of work that he has. But I just think he's lost it in his older years. And he's done a lot of passion projects like Lincoln and stuff. I don't know. He's just kind of boring. I've seen the trailers for Ready Player One. It looks like a CGI fest. I'm just not into that. And from what I hear, the book wasn't really well written. It was more nostalgia porn. Kind of like Stranger Things with its reliance on 80s nostalgia. But Stranger Things, at least the first season, is really good, and it hits the mark. But anyways, there's one thing that'll get my attention. It's anything that triggers the social justice media. And they always, especially gaming media, Vox, they own Polygon. They always fall back on Gamergate. So, I read some of this article, not all of it. It's more fun to read it and just respond to it as I read on. It's pretty funny. So here we go. Ready Player One, Backlash Explained. The Ready Player One book used to be considered a fun romp. Then Gamergate happened. Now, what does one have to do with the other? Well, they're going to put a square in a circle hole, I am sure. So Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One, an adaptation of the 2011 novel of the same name by Ernest Cline, is about to debut. And the internet is ready and waiting to tell him why that's a terrible idea. Ready Player One is a terrible book, and it will be a terrible movie, the outline proclaimed. Many people find its take on games and so-called genre art to be a dull, pandering tableau of reference points as an end unto themselves, says the AV Club. I don't read any of those sites. Reading the end of Ready Player One, opined a writer for Tor. This I have read. I felt like a kid who thinks eating an entire cake of him by himself sounded fun. I was sick of it and craving something of real substance. I read that article by Tor. It's not bad. I mean, they basically say the writing isn't up to snuff. It does a lot of telling rather than showing. And they gave examples. Look, I like to read. I'm a big reader. And if the prose is lacking, if the writing is subpar, I gotta say, it takes me out of the book. So a time traveler from 2011 could be forgiven for being deeply confused by this response. In 2011, Ready Player One was beloved. It was a guaranteed pleasure. It was witty. It was not only a simple bit of fun, but also a rich and plausible picture of future friendships in a world not too distant from our own. What gives? How did the consensus on a single book go from exuberant and meaningful fun to everything that is wrong with the internet over the span of 7 years? Luckily, there's a perfect stepping stone that can help us understand exactly how this transition happened. In 2015, Klein released his book, Armada, to a reception that looked a lot closer to the consensus on Ready Player One today than the consensus on Ready Player One in 2011. And that's because in 2015, the geek community of the internet was still in the throes of the seismic event known as Gamergate. Dun dun dun! Gamergate was a toxic cultural battle filled with harassment so vicious it would become a major influence on the alt-right, but fundamentally it was about who gets to be a geek, which parts of geek identity are worth lauding, and which parts are destructive. Gamergate changed the way we talk about geek culture, and in the end, it would make it borderline impossible to think about books like Ready Player One as harmless, meaningless fun. Ready Player One, I haven't read it, and I didn't plan on seeing the movie. I might just to trigger these asshats, but it's it is harmless and meaningless fun. That's what it is. It's not the Turner Diaries or Mein Kampf, but they'll probably make an argument suggesting otherwise. Back in 2011, it was almost impossible not to think about Ready Player One as harmless fun, because it's not. The premise is appealingly silly and insubstantial. It's 2045, and the dystopian world has become unbearable. As an escape, most of humanity spends its time plugged into the Oasis, an expansive VR landscape that incorporates most of the 20th and 21st centuries pop culture into itself, so that users can pilot the spaceship from Firefly to a Dungeons and Dragons castle. Okay, stop. Yeah, I mean that sounds like a cool idea. I mean, I've been reading plenty of stories like that for a couple decades now, but it sounds like a fun idea, and I could see why people got into it. They could live vicariously through this story, and through that story, live vicariously through all the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s stuff they loved. It's a good form of escapism. Okay, back to the article. The plot is more pleasant nonsense. The founder of the Oasis, James Halliday, has died, and he has left his fortune and control of the Oasis itself to the person who can track down an Easter egg he's hidden inside the game. Yeah, that sounds cute. To find the egg, hunters, gunters, in the parlance of the book, okay, will need an encyclopedic knowledge of Halliday's beloved 1980s pop culture. And our hero Wade, an 18-year-old video game addict from a trailer park, kind of sounds like the character from the last Starfighter movie, is sure that he's just the man to do it. He just has to find the egg before a massive corporation gets its hands on it instead, regulating away the freedom of virtual reality and ending the Oasis as Wade knows it. What ensues in an exuberantly paced quest narrative that begs to be devoured like candy and refuses any hard questions and contemplation on the reader's part? Why would you want to think about how potentially toxic empty nostalgia can be? Ultraman's fighting Mechagodzilla over here. Yeah, that's fine. I want to stop for a second. One thing that bothers me about these journalists, and particularly these SJW journalists, is sometimes people just want a fun ride from point A to point B. Sometimes this is really bad, like a Transformers movie, which doesn't make any sense. It's all special effects and it's boring as hell. And sometimes it can be fun, like Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger. There's no deep think or messages or lessons to be learned, and that's fine. It's just escapism, and it's like a sugar-coated candy. Just enjoy yourself. Back to the article. The writing was never very good. It's mostly just long lists of pop culture references in Wade's opinion as to whether the property in question sucks or rocks. But for the kind of book Ready Player One is trying to be, that doesn't necessarily matter. The primary aesthetic pleasure here is one of recognition. Yes, I know that reference, and yes, I agree that it sucks or rocks. And Ready Player One is there to serve that pleasure to its readers on a silver platter, assuming its readers are also gamers obsessed with the bits of 80s pop culture that were built with teenage boys in mind. Okay, stop. That's fine. I mean, he's got a target audience in mind, and he's pitching his work towards that specific target audience. That's a good salesman, and it's a good writer. Not necessarily with his prose or his words, but it's he knows who he's writing for. He knows what he wants to write. He's writing for himself, essentially. And other people can enjoy it with him if they like what he's writing. Back to the article. But the main thing Ready Player One is doing is telling those 80s boy culture obsessed gamers that they matter. That in fact they are the most important people in the universe. That knowing every single goddamn word of Monty Python and the Holy Grail can have life or death stakes, because why shouldn't it? Yes, that is a crucial step in Wade's battle to save the Oasis. Okay, stop. Again, he's writing it for his younger self. He's writing it for the inner child in his older self, and for people that think like him. And for a lot of gamers, a lot of people from nerd culture, they grew up in the 80s, the 90s. they've probably went through some awkward moments, some tough moments, and the things that we enjoyed in culture, they're powerful. I mean, they help us escape from the rigors of real life. And maybe Klein, like a lot of gamers, a lot of grown-up nerds, I mean, maybe they were outcasts or misfits, just socially awkward. They didn't fit in with the in crowd. They weren't cool. They weren't hip. And gaming and these sci-fi movies and these things, it meant a lot to them. And it means a lot to them to find other people that are of like mind. It's their way of being social and finding a place to belong. And usually people like that, with that mindset, I mean, they're usually celebrated and encouraged to find others like them, to find an identity, to find a meaning. And this person right here sounds like a bully, just trying to put him down and mock them for being different, for being the other. All right, back to the article. For readers in Klein's target demographic in 2011, that message felt empowering. For readers who weren't, it felt like a harmless piece of affirmation meant for someone else. Everyone deserves a silly escapist fantasy, right? Yeah, actually, I think so. And since Klein's silly escapist fantasy wasn't specifically meant for girls, unlike, say, Twilight, which was getting savage in popular culture at the time, Ready Player One was largely left alone by the people it wasn't built for. Okay, stop for a second. I see where this author's starting to go. It wasn't meant for girls. Girls always get picked on, but the boys, they get away because they're what, boys? They're men. They're white men, whatever. Back to the article. There was the occasional harsh piece of criticism from the in-group, but mostly the response was welcoming. Even the New York Times, which noted that gaming has overwhelmed everything else about this book, gave it a gentle, mostly positive review. Not that this audience, or people that would read something like this, give a damn what the New York Times thinks. 4 years later, Armada came out to a very different reaction. Armada, like Ready Player One, is primarily a delivery mechanism for geek nostalgia and geek affirmation. Only in this case, it's focused on alien invasion stories rather than just 80s pop culture. Although this main character, like Ready Player One's Wade, does have an anachronistically encyclopedic knowledge of 80s stuff. Well, you write what you know. This guy knows 80s stuff, so more power to him. It takes the premise that the video game industry is actually a secret government strategy meant to train civilians to fight agents in an alien invasion. Again, sounds like The Last Starfighter, except not really. In that movie, the video game was an alien government secret strategy. So when the aliens come, gamers are the human race's best hope of survival. Over the course of the book's first act, 18-year-old Zach Lightman goes from nerdy high school gamer to a captain in the Earth Defense Alliance. Adored by all for his video game prowess and provided with not only his favorite snacks and gaming music, but also a specially bred strain of weed designed specifically for gaming. Oh man, I like that. All those years I spent playing video games weren't wasted after all, eh? He crows to his mother. Klein loves the word eh. His characters all sound vaguely Canadian because of it. Yeah, that sounds like a good concept there. I mean, not now in my 30s, but certainly when I was a teenager, that would be something very inviting and comforting for me to read. The aesthetic pleasure here is the same as it was in Ready Player One. I get that reference, and so is the central idea that gamers have the potential to be the most important people in the universe. But in 2015, readers no longer welcome such pleasures with universally open arms. The Washington Post dismissed it as nostalgic narcissism. The AV Club found it depressing. Armada was a dull retread of Ready Player One, critics opine, filled with off-putting nerd gatekeeping and lists of better and more interesting stories instead of any original ideas of its own. Well, that sounds like most media, certainly the crap and fodder that comes out of Hollywood. It's as though Willy Wonka made you prove you knew the chemical composition of a nougat before he let you into the chocolate factory, The Verge complained. Okay, so what, if they don't get the references, they don't enjoy the book, and that makes the author some sort of gatekeeper? Maybe he's just writing for an audience that he knows on a personal level and a cultural level, and he's not trying to water it down and make it all things to all people. The most off-cited and deeply damning Armada review was at Slate. Dun, dun, dun! By Laura Hudson, now an editor at Vox's sister site, The Verge. The shameless, jejune wish fulfillment of the book burns hot and bright, she wrote, arguing that Armada was cringingly terrible and transparent in its self-indulgence, and that Klein's status as the apotheosis of nerd culture should be troubling to anyone who identifies with the label. I seriously doubt that Laura Hudson is someone who can make that observation. What does she know about the culture that Klein is clearly so adept at writing about with all of his references that they don't get and feel intimidated by? For Hudson, the empty nerd nostalgia that Klein's work champions points to something toxic in nerd culture itself. It's a valuable question for gaming culture, and nerd culture more generally, to ask itself, she wrote. Do we want to tell stories that make sense of the things we used to love, that help us remember the reasons we were so drawn to them, and create new works that inspire that level of devotion? Or do we simply want to hear the litany of our childhood repeated back to us like an endless lullaby for the rest of our lives? Okay, stop for a second. Again, she wants like some big reflective think piece. The guy's just writes fun escapism. And as a journalist writing for Slate and The Verge, she's writing on other people's inventions, other people's work. What has she created or done herself? Back to the article. Hudson doesn't mention Gamergate by name, but that's the elephant in the room here. Okay, well, they probably know that because she's part of their sister site, and they're obsessed with Gamergate, these SJW journalists. Gamergate is why the toxicity of nerd culture is a more than reasonable peg for a review of a book like Armada in 2015. It's why, at the time, people were thinking a lot about the toxicity of nerd culture in general. Nah, just you were thinking about it, you people. And it's why, 4 years after the debut of Ready Player One, it was no longer easy to think of Klein's nostalgic, nerdy fantasies as harmless. Oh, snowflakes. Oh, why dost thou melt so much? Gamersgate origins are nebulous and contradictory, as ably outlined by my colleague, Todd Vander Weref. Well, he's certainly referencing... or Constance, a woman, so that she's certainly the author is certainly referencing people that are in her clique. What's important for the Ready Player One conversation is what Gamergate had evolved into by 2015, and that is angry gamers, mostly mostly young, straight white men, hurling the abuse at their targets, mostly women, in the name of a kind of nerd purity. Stop. Okay, Gamergate involved a slut named Zoe Quinn who slept her way with cucked out male journalists to get her crappy game promoted in their media. And Zoe Quinn was backed up by Anita Sarkeesian, who's a complete charlatan who was insulting the medium and people's dear hobby as sexist and misogynist and saying all this crap while falsely claiming she was a gamer. She was not. She was just called out on it. And yes, gamers are very blunt and they can be very vicious. But in the gaming culture, you know, people that are in it, whether they're man or woman, most of them are men, you know, we understood that. We know it's like that. We weren't always happy with it, but these outsiders come in with these vicious attacks themselves. I mean, calling someone sexist or racist or misogynist when you don't fully understand their hobby, you don't have any respect for it, and you certainly aren't a part of it. I mean, that's gonna draw some ire, I would think. And I'm sure some things were said that were at a line. That happens a lot in gaming culture. But what we have here are strangers on their high horses galloping into a hobby that they were never a part of, and insulting people and accusing people of being awful things. And all they really wanted to do was cash in on what had become a multi-billion-dollar industry bigger than Hollywood movies. They ignored it for so long, and then they come in and they start up with their usual bullying crap, just calling people misogynist, racist, Nazis, and all this other stuff. And they never took the time, as social justice warriors love to say, we have to understand people. They never took the time to understand these people. And why? Well, because they're mostly young, straight, white men, and that's all they see, and they don't care to understand the people and what drives them, like what actually makes them who they are, or to understand the culture. These people are assholes. All right, back to the article. That abuse took the form of graphic rape and death threats. Oh, 1 second here. I gotta see this. Oh, it's a feminist frequency Tumblr post. I'm not gonna click on it. A lot of these supposed rape threats were just made up or lies, and others was, actually, let's click on this. Let's click on it. Let's see what it was. All right, yes, please explain to me again how this has nothing to do with sexism. Trigger warning for extreme misogyny, gendered slurs, sexual harassment, sexual violence, victim blaming, graphic rape, and death threats. The main reason why all the harassed to woman is because of all the dumb feminist bitches who want to be superior. Hope you die raped. Okay. He's not criticizing women. He's criticizing feminists. Feminists hate families. They always complain about the patriarchy. They don't have the mindset of a real woman. A real woman wants a strong patriarch in their life, so they can be and they want to be the strong matriarch. Start families. Feminists, if you really look into their ideology, it's this cultural Marxist crap. Nihilism, deconstructionism, everything that works basically and has made people happy. Feminists, they don't classify as women. It says feminist bitches. That's feminist bitches a little redundant, but it's accurate. Feminist frequency. Don't pull the gender card. You're not being harassed because you're a woman. It's because you're an ignorant cunt. Okay, this is what gamers do. Okay, this is what a lot of people do actually, but especially gamers. They're brutally honest. It's not because you're a woman. It's because you're an asshole. And he uses a vicious word like that, because he knows it gets their goat. You're going down, bitch. This isn't directed at women. It's directed directly at feminist frequency. They don't represent women. That's what you get, bitch. That's what you'll get. Oh, look at... Oh, Anita Sarkeesian right here. Some very scary threats have just been made against me and my family. Contacting authorities now. That's what you get, bitch. That's what you'll get. Well, you're a cunt. What did you expect? I would agree she is a cunt. Andrew Livingston. You lying cunt. You made all this up for attention. Pathetic. Yeah, she's a charlatan. She did. Now, when you go after a woman with a word like cunt, and it's biologically she's a woman. I don't know what she identifies as. But cunt, you are giving her ammunition to play the victim. Feminist frequency. I hope he succeeds. Get off Twitter, you horse. Yes, all women can keep their mouth shut. No, I don't agree. All women can keep their mouth shut. But feminist frequency, they don't put into context here where this hate is coming from. I mean, they always want to try to understand why terrorists exist, and they blame they blame America and American foreign policy And, I don't always entirely disagree with that. A lot of American foreign policy is screwed up. It's messed up, and it does create more terrorists. From bombing Laos and during Vietnam to destabilizing Syria. It's or destabilizing Libya. I mean, yeah, you usually have to reflect and reflect on your actions and try to understand if it's made things worse or not. But these feminists, they take out the context. They just act like these guys are attacking them because they're women and they just want men in their hobby. What man just wants men in their hobby? Gamers always want women. They go nuts if they see a woman. They love it. They go crazy. Immature, but they love having women. They become rock stars. You have Twitch giving out $2,000 to women to become streamers. All a woman needs is a pair of boobs and show off that cleavage, and she'll make way more than $2,000 in a month. How is my favorite slut doing? I take it you'll get on your knees tonight and be a good woman. He's trolling her. I just want to say, and this is my opinion, your video has inspired me to leave this comment. You are a cunt, a big fucking cunt. It's directed at her personally. Shit video, and Sarkeesian is a stupid, lying cunt. Okay, video. It's in response to a video. I've seen some more videos. She's a slanderer. Okay, misandrous cunt. So there's some context to what he's upset about. A lot of bisexual slut. A lot of this is it's ugly words, but I've watched her stuff. I can't stand her. I don't watch much of her, but she horned her way into the industry because she wanted to make money off of a multi-billion-dollar industry, and she insulted everyone in it. Gamergate origins. Oh wait, nebulous and contradictory. Yeah, already was there. Graphic rape threats. Okay, sometimes so detailed that some of the women targeted by Gamergate went into hiding. Let's see, this link here, went into hiding. Again, they're sourcing themselves. The Verge. Oh, Anita Sarkeesian said she was driven out of house by threats. Considering how she was new to gaming, maybe she thought these people were actually serious. But being the charlatan that she is, I think she was just playing the victim and lying, and she's not to be trusted. Occasionally, Gamergaters would send SWAT teams to their targets' homes. I believe that was in a... Yeah, I think that was in a Law and Order episode. See, I didn't follow Gamergate because I left. I stopped paying attention to mainstream tech and gaming media because I saw the writing on the wall in 2012. I saw the industry getting big, and I saw these SJWs getting into the hobby, and as soon as they get in, it's like a bad girlfriend, She wants to change you as soon as she starts dating you, and it's like, whoa, I thought you kind of liked who I was. I mean, it's one thing if you want me to clean up my room and organize my sock drawer. It's another thing if you're changing the entire way I dress, or or what friends I'm allowed to talk to. That's what Anita Sarkeesian is. Not that I would touch her with a 10-foot pole. It was all a particularly vicious and brutal kind of gatekeeping. It wasn't gatekeeping. They just saw... They were like antibodies, and they saw a foreign substance in their body, and they were just protecting it. I mean, it was a hostile foreign substance. Gamergate's targets were primarily people who were interested in performing feminist critiques, more like feminist slander, of video games, or in making non-traditional video games for women or disabled people or people of color. Anita Sarkeesian knows nothing about disabled people or people of color, or women. She's a feminist. For this, I mean, women love Nintendo games. For this, packs of angry nerds decided that they must be punished. No, and women also like puzzle games. And, I mean, their tastes are just different, but, if she really wanted to focus on games for women, then she would focus on the types of games that women enjoyed, instead of tearing down and smearing the guys that enjoyed games like Doom or the original Tomb Raider. Culture writers who think a lot about nerd culture were deeply shaken. Bullshit. They were just virtue signaling, and culture writers, do you get a major in that? Give me a break. They started to write think pieces about how nerd culture could have become so deeply toxic, so profoundly misogynistic and destructive that it could birth a movement like Gamergate. Well, Gamergate was a response. It was a response to vicious attacks. There's a fundamental lack of empathy or understanding for other human beings at play here. Stop. Okay, that I actually, on some level, agree with. Gamers, they tend to jump all over people, and they can be, pretty vicious. Part of it's the humor, though. I mean, it's just dark humor, and I gotta say, I like dark humor, but it's guys insulting guys, and I've known plenty of women in the dark ages of the internet message forums, text only, from the late 90s, early 2000s, to plenty of women who could just hang with the best of them. And, these feminists love to celebrate these kick-ass, badass bitches that just can kick ass and take names with the boys. But they act like delicate little flowers when they could, choose to play or fight fire with fire. These people live in a fucked up alternate universe where everything is done for the lulz, or to win points in some kind of psychopathic game of one-upmanship. Yeah, one-upmanship, that's gaming culture, alright. What we're seeing is the gamification of a social struggle. That makes no damn sense. Social struggle. As Destructoid, Jonathan Holmes pointed the finger at the sentiment of elitism, the idea that there are certain kinds of gamers that deserve to take pride in that name and others that should be ashamed, the process of establishing superiority over another group of gamers by belittling them. Okay, stop. Within the gaming community, there's a ton of that elitism, and it's usually done as a joke, but it can also be pretty serious, like the whole PC gaming master race versus the console peasants. And it's funny. It's part of the culture, but it's also virtual, it's online, it's not real. And gamers are always happy to accept new people into their hobby, but if you walk into somebody's house and you tell them how small it is, how dirty it is, and how cheap it is, and how sexist and racist their artwork is, I mean, they're going to kick you the fuck out. By the turn of the millennium, wrote Lee Alexander at Gamasutra, the cultural imperatives of gaming were have money, have woman, get a gun, and then a bigger gun. Be an outcast, celebrate that, defeat anyone who threatens you. You don't need cultural references. You don't need anything but gaming. Cultural references. Didn't they just criticize Ready Player One and Armada for, I guess, overdoing it in the cultural references? And as far as get a gun, then a bigger gun, be an outcast, celebrate that, defeat anyone who threatens you. A lot of these gamers, like I said before, they are outcasts. They feel powerless in a lot of social or certain or personal situations, and that's they're living out. I believe feminists call it a male power fantasy. Well, it's just a power fantasy, and yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, hearing that, get a gun, get a bigger gun. One, that's progression. You see that in games a lot. Get a bigger gun, get more skills, get a bigger spell, get 3 lightning bolts instead of 1 lightning bolt. I mean, yeah, you're getting bigger and stronger. You progress. That's part of the gaming formula. But it's fun. It's cool. It's great. There's nothing wrong with it. They act like it is when these journalists and these people in media are absolute sharks to each other in real life. Those imperatives, she concluded, she, of course, would create an amorphous cultural shape that was dark and loud on the outside, hollow on the inside. It can't be so hollow on the inside when what started as a subculture that everyone ignored became a multi-billion-dollar megaculture, bigger than mainstream movies and mainstream music, probably combined. And that money is what attracted these scolds. And unfortunately for Klein, his work reads like a compendium of all the aspects of nerd culture that critics have come to see as a breeding ground for Gamergate. Now, see, they're blaming the culture, and they're also generalizing and smearing everyone in the culture for the actions of certain individuals. And they completely ignore that these people, these the social justice crowd, which existed before they got into gaming. Gaming got rich, so they wanted to get into gaming and start preaching, scolding, and smearing people. And these people are like, who the hell are you? Get the fuck out of my hobby. Get out. I play games to get away from people like you. I don't watch TV. Don't watch Hollywood movies. Don't read women's magazines or even men's magazines. You infiltrate every single subculture with your constant preaching and your smearing and your scolding. Just stop. Get away. Get out of my one sanctuary. But they're here. They're here. Both Wade and Zach follow Alexander's imperatives like they're checking them off a list. They start off poor, but then make millions from their video games. They earn cool hacker girlfriends like trophies. They get guns, and then bigger guns. Their cultural references are valuable purely for their use in gaming. Any culture that exists outside of their video games might as well not exist, and gleefully they celebrate their outcast status. Yes, because a lot of gamers are outcasts in real life. I mean, it's hard out there, and people, they don't respect the hobby. So living through this fantasy where gaming makes you something more than you are. I mean, yeah, that's cool. It's a great little escapism. It sounds like he really understands and has love for the hobby that he's a part of and the culture that he's a part of. I was too weird even for the weirdos. Well, there you go. Wade announces at the beginning of Ready Player One. His school doesn't get him, so he heads to the Oasis. There, his 80s pop culture knowledge ensures his high social status, and his debates with his best friend over which 80s properties rock and which suck are considered high in entertainment value. When a fellow player dares to question his knowledge, Wade is able to beat him into submission under a stream of trivia. You're holding Sword Quest Earthworld. Can you name the next 3 games in the series? I don't know what that is. Until his rival lowers his head in shame, and the watching awestruck crowd bursts into applause. That sounds cute, I gotta say. That sounds cute. The world of Klein's escapist fantasy is a world of elitist gatekeeping. No, it's just it's a nerd fantasy, and you're bullying him now. It is a world in which a person's value is determined by their knowledge of esoteric cultural trivia. That's what makes it funny. Where those of lesser value must be defeated and wiped away. And where gaming is all that matters. And crucially, it is a world specifically for straight, white men. This author just threw that in there. But as far as being defeated and wiped away, that's exactly what social justice people do. I mean, this is why the gamers responded with such vitriol against Anita Sarkeesian, is because she wanted to defeat and wipe away the existing culture and replace it, deconstruct it, and replace it with what she thought it ought to be. Klein's cultural references are all aimed at boys. Well, you write for what you know. He's a boy, and most gamers were boys. So, the pop culture of the 80s that's built for girls, like Gem and the Holograms, or the Babysitter's Club, or the American Girl dolls, has no place here. Okay, because he probably didn't have sisters, and he wasn't into those things. He's going off his knowledge. I don't know much about Babysitter's Club or American Girl dolls. I did watch Gem and the Holograms with my sisters, and Gem and the Holograms was pretty fun. I gotta say, it's I mean, I remember the antagonists were the Misfits, Gem and the Holograms. They were like 80s pop rock singers, glam rock. They had a talking computer named Synergy that was left to her by her late father to help her fight the Misfits and their, greedy music producer boyfriends or whatever, boyfriend that wanted to sully the music empire and legacy that Gem's father created. So the Misfits were the SJWs, and Gem and the Holograms were the gamers. So Gem, I mean, to make it more realistic, Gem and the Holograms would have called the Misfits cunts a couple times and tell them to get out of their hobby. But anyways, Klein didn't know that stuff. I mean, I know because of my sisters, and I enjoyed them myself too. I'm not trying to qualify it. I enjoyed Gem and the Holograms. I enjoyed My Little Pony. There's another one I'm thinking of. Rainbow Bright, Strawberry Shortcake. Yeah, I like those things, but he maybe didn't watch them. You gotta stick with what you know, right? What you know. Now check this out. Can you imagine how shittily men would treat Ready Player One if it was all femme stuff? Oh god, jealous. Okay, he writes about a DeLorean that has Ghostbusters and all this stuff boys like on it. Hey Jane, why don't you write something yourself instead of complaining about something that was written by a man for young boys? I mean, honestly, Jane, write something besides a nasty tweet. Stop. You just have to be a victim in your life. There are girls in his universe. Wade's best friend has a white male avatar but is secretly a black lesbian. A revelation to which Wade reacts by deciding that it does not matter because he doesn't even see people's race, gender, or sexuality. Well, it shouldn't matter. It's a passage that reads remarkably like the "I don't care if you're black, white, or green, or purple" speech. What speech is that? And that carries the same basic problem. Wade should care that his best friend is a black lesbian because those are important facts about his friend's life. But in this world, they're unimportant because only things that affect straight white dudes really matter. But that's very highly presumptuous of the author, and no. Be your race, your sexual orientation, your gender does not matter. It does not matter. What matters is what's on the inside. The content of your character, who you are, your experiences, how you got to be who you are, I mean, what's on the inside, your mind, your personality, your thoughts, your feelings. Race, gender, sexuality, that's just a superficial piece of the puzzle. It's not, there's no depth to that. These people are the racists and the sexists. A racist is someone who cares primarily about someone's race. A sexist is someone who primarily cares about someone's sex. It's a superficial way to label people, to look at people. I mean, those aren't important facts. And if they are to you, then you're a boring person. We are so much more than I'm a freaking ginger, okay? Yeah, I burn easily in the sun. Maybe I can joke about it for 5 minutes, but there's a lot more to me than my race or my sexuality. I'm straight, or the fact that I'm a guy. I don't think about that. And no, that's not white privilege. Most people don't think about these superficial things. We've had court cases and wars and civil rights struggles to move beyond that. These people are regressive in how they want the world to operate. People are more than their race, their sex, or their sexuality. And then there's Artemis, Wade's love interest. Artemis is as flat as a paper doll. You talking about her chest? A character who exists only as a prize who will reward Wade when he proves his masculinity. Okay, stop. Honestly, for a young, awkward guy growing up, that's all women want. You gotta prove your masculinity or your worth. You want to get a girl, you gotta prove your masculinity, or you gotta prove your worth in some other way. such as having a gold Rolex or a flashy car. Back to the article. Sure, we're told that she's strong and smart and a great gamer, but she's never allowed to be such a good gamer that she poses a real threat to Wade. Okay, stop. Well, she's not his antagonist, is she? I mean, he's the main guy. It's his fantasy. What the hell does this, or whatever, dude? Does there have to be parody every time a guy meets a woman? I don't know, whatever. Back to the article. Her gaming skills are just good enough to make her a worthy prize for our hero, unlike other girls who we are given to understand are empty-headed and vain. Okay, stop. When you're looking for a girl, especially at a young age, it does get better as you get older, but when you're at a young age, as Jim Morrison said, women seem wicked when you're unwanted. They do. You know, and that's how you see women. You see them as airheaded or vain or empty, just empty, shallow people because they don't want you. And chances are, the guys they do want, they only want because they have social status and the bulging muscles. A lot of women are like that. A lot of men are like that. Women complain about it all the time. Oh, you just want the girl with the big bosoms and the apple bottom, and women just want guys with the rippling biceps and the bling bling. Back to the article. Wade is forever comparing the avatars of other girls unfavorably to Artemis's effortless, cool, an attitude you can see repeated in some of Klein's old poetry. Okay, well, he's looking at who she is. He thinks she's cool. She's got a good personality. I like girls with a good wit, a wry wit. I mean, that's sexy. So he's looking beyond her boobies. And Wade wins her by hunting. And biologically, that's pretty much what women want, a provider. Artemis repeatedly tells Wade that she's not interested in a romantic relationship, but Wade wears her down in the end by sheer force of his nice guy persistence. She's basically a NPC, non-player character, concludes Beth Elderkin at IO9. Okay, fine, she's an NPC in a book that clearly is based after games and gaming culture. And wearing her down with his nice guy persistence, one, that doesn't wear any girl down, but this is a fantasy, and it goes in line with the 80s romantic comedies that come from the era that he's trying to harken back to. So he's being consistent. All of these issues may have seemed trivial or unimportant pre-Gamergate. They still are. But by 2015 it was no longer the case. Yeah, with you. Now they were all many critics could see when they looked at Klein's work. What used to seem fun and frothy and harmless in Ready Player One was dead. Gamergate killed it. Now, you people are just on a mission now. You want to smear the entire subculture, and you want to defeat it and replace it. To be fair to Klein, at no point does his work endorse harassing women or minorities or suggest that Gamergate was a super good idea that's just been tragically misunderstood. Oh yeah, now you say it. So, to some readers, the persistent association of his work with Gamergate seems to be both a stretch and fundamentally unjust. It is. Why can't they just read a dumb fantasy about gamers saving the world without feeling like they're somehow endorsing rape threats? Yeah. Hey, guess what? Wrote Chris Meadows, a cuck, at Teleread. Many of us who abhor Gamergate are nonetheless gamer nerds ourselves, and we actually enjoy reading about... Okay, maybe he's not a cuck. My bad. I thought he was white knighting for a second. Enjoy reading about video gamers being depicted as awesome while still feeling that women are people and worthy of respect too. And of course you can read Ready Player One as a fun, dumb fantasy. No one's stopping you. Well, you are trying to. You're pissing all over the parade here. But Klein's world is not just one... Oh, here we go. Is not just one in which gamers get to be awesome, but also one in which gamers get to be awesome specifically because everyone else sucks. But you just said it wasn't racist or sexist, or there's no proof of that. And this is you reading into it. Again, presumptuous. It's a world in which women are trophies, like Hollywood. The concerns of... And media. News media. Look at all the sexual harassment going on. The people that preach to us the most are the worst in actuality. It's a world in which women are trophies. The concerns of straight white men are all that matters. Again, you're just reading that into it. And the greatest possible calling of anyone's life is the rote memorization of trivia at the expense of all else. It's a dumb fantasy. That's it. The most popular book in recent years for a woman to read was 50 Shades of Grey. And in that book, a woman allows herself to be dominated, and she's into rough sex by a very good-looking billionaire man who treats her like a sex slave. And women were having orgasms over this book all over my social media feeds. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's just straight up erotica and smut. And you know what? Good for them. They have every right to enjoy that. It doesn't mean they're gonna suddenly get into S&M and look for, or become a dominatrix. I mean, let people have their fun in the privacy of their own home. Klein does gesture at the idea that there is a world outside of video games. Wade is briefly humiliated and depressed by the life he's built for himself, one of total isolation in which he never leaves his crappy apartment with its blacked out windows because he's too busy searching for Holiday's egg. These people just keep contradicting themselves. It's like, is it or isn't it? Is it or isn't it? And who would want to leave a virtual world when you got these SJW freaks constantly scolding you and wagging their fingers at you, trying to control? And when he encounters Halliday's avatar in the Oasis, Halliday passes on some words of wisdom to him. As terrifying and painful as reality can be, he says, it's also the only place where you can find true happiness, because reality is real, unless you're transgendered, and the social justice warriors want you to think that a man can become a woman, can become a man again. In that case, reality has to be put on hold, and we all have to put it on hold as well, and acknowledge their fake gender association. But the moment reads as lip service, because Ready Player One's heart has no time for the world outside of video games. Not really. This sounds like a really bad C-level book report. It's too busy nerding out over how freaking cool it is that Ultraman is fighting Mechagodzilla. Well, that sounds damn cool. And a kid is saving the world by reciting every, needless blasphemy, every word of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Yeah, I mean, it's like a rite of passage. Monty Python and the Holy Grail is a great movie. It's one of the greatest comedies made. It's not, and it transcends, all culture. And people who can quote that movie like that, I mean, you'll impress a lot of nerds. You'll make friends. You're bullying people. I mean, not everyone can recite all 62 perceived genders. Some people can recite every word from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. People are into different things. And in a pre-Gamergate world, the sheer glee and fun of moments like that were enough to make the dark underbelly of the fantasy disappear and carry Ready Player One to the height of cultural phenomena. But post-Gamergate, the dark underbelly has become all too apparent. The fun isn't quite enough to carry the book anymore, so now the onus is on Spielberg's forthcoming movie to overcome its Gamergate baggage. No, it's not. And I think what's going on here is these people who aren't gamers, they're never part of gaming. These people are now just pissing all over gamers and nerd culture. These are racist people. These are sexist people, focusing on people's skin color and their sexuality and their gender. And there's a war here, and they see something that gamers find enjoyable or beautiful, and they want to destroy it. They want to abort it like a defenseless fetus in the womb. These people are destroyers. They are not creators. Demon out.